This is the story of an American man who meets four sisters in a rural village in Brazil, South America. They all fall in love with each other, overcome threats and coincidences, and eventually become a large family, building a beautiful future together. Before you watch, please subscribe and like the video. It helps us a lot. There once was a 47-year-old man named David Miller, born and raised in the United States. He was a business consultant with a respectable career back home, passionate about his work but also feeling a sense of boredom with his stable life. While not unhappy or lacking anything significant, as he approached his late 40s, a constant thirst to see more of the world bloomed within him. A desire to escape the familiar routine and corporate grind of the US and discover something new in a different land continuously pushed him. Eventually, ignoring the concerns of those around him, David dismantled the foundation he had carefully built. Packing only the essentials into a large backpack, he decided to travel the world, seeking business ideas. He was particularly drawn to Central and South America. The unfamiliar languages, vibrant festivals, and hidden traditions of craftsmanship all struck him as foreign yet captivating. So, he began his journey by visiting famous tourist destinations like Mexico, Peru, and Argentina. However, he found himself increasingly interested as he ventured away from tourist spots into smaller towns and the countryside. He realized that villages forgotten by most, or rural areas where artisans were hidden away, held real, gem-like cultures, gradually moving further and further off the beaten path. He learned of a rural village in Brazil, located quite far from major cities like São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro. Though difficult to access due to poor transportation, this very fact made it more intriguing to David. When he arrived in the village, the sun was already high in the sky, yet he hadn't found lodging. Just as he was nearing exhaustion from the heat, language barriers, and lack of information, someone warmly called out to him. It was four young women, sisters living together in the village. The eldest, Lucia, was in her late 20s, practical, responsible, and like a mother figure. The second, Isabel, in her mid-20s, was quiet but deeply considerate and interested in languages. The third, Natalia, also in her mid-20s, was expressive with her emotions and had a keen artistic sense. The youngest, Camila, in her early to mid-20s, was bubbly, curious, and the mood maker. Having lost their parents early on, the four sisters relied on each other for survival. Their small, cozy house, though looking old from the outside, was meticulously cared for inside. As David hesitated, Lucia approached him first, speaking a mix of Spanish and Portuguese. Isabel knew some English, while Natalia and Camila had picked up slang and phrases from American movies and music they enjoyed. Thanks to this mix, communication proceeded surprisingly smoothly. "Are you lost?" Lucia asked. "You look exhausted. Come to our house first. We'll give you some water." At her words, David breathed a sigh of relief. Overcome by heat and hunger, he was on the verge of collapsing and desperately needed help. The four sisters willingly took him to their home, offering him cool water and food. To make a living after losing their parents, all four sisters engaged in various tasks like farming, selling handicrafts, and caring for livestock. Although they weren't well off financially, the warm-hearted and lively sisters had good relationships with the villagers. In a slightly trembling voice, David briefly explained that he was from the United States and traveling to find new business ideas. At this, the sisters' eyes sparkled. Natalia and Camila, especially fascinated by American culture, asked excitedly, "You're really American? We love Hollywood movies," chattering away about actors or places they'd seen on screen. Isabel occasionally summarized the conversation in English, while Lucia watched her younger sister's reactions with a fond smile from a slight distance. That night, telling him not to wander the potentially unsafe neighborhood alleys alone, the sisters urged David to stay at their house. David hesitated briefly but found it hard to refuse their kindness and accepted. Although he had met various locals during his journey to Brazil, this was the first time four people had simultaneously taken care of him. A corner of his heart felt admiration, thinking, Is this the true warmth of Latin America? The next morning, over a simple breakfast prepared by the sisters, David began to learn more about their lives. Lucia, as the eldest, led the household, managing chores, fields, and livestock. Isabel primarily handled selling handicrafts at the village market. Natalia enjoyed artistic decoration around the house, crafting, and playing simple instruments. The youngest, Camila, full of energy and curiosity, often traveled with her sisters for business and tried to learn foreign languages. Meanwhile, David wanted to explore the village for his business ideas. The sisters readily offered to be his guides. There are many skilled artisans in our village, Isabel explained. People who make herbal remedies, crafts, traditional liquors, but they have no way to promote them, so they only trade on a small scale within the village. Lucia added, since few outsiders come here, many are struggling, but the quality is truly excellent. David strongly resonated with their words. These kinds of unique products could do really well if marketed online or appealed to foreign tourists. Based on his experience in the US, he began formulating a plan to introduce these local specialties overseas. He thought, if I could help with systematic planning and promotion, maybe the village economy could improve, and the sisters could have a more stable life. Over the next few days, exploring markets, fields, and workshops together, David and the sisters naturally grew closer. The sisters shared a common trait despite their different personalities, warm hearts and a deep trust and affection for one another. Having only each other to rely on after losing their parents early, they were always honest and considerate. This atmosphere provided comfort to David as well. Although he was in his late 40s, thanks to his appearance and consistent self-care, he looked like he was in his 30s. The sisters were quite surprised by this, often remarking, "No way you're 47. As time went by, the sisters unknowingly began to develop feelings for David. It wasn't just because he was American and represented a world different from theirs, but because of his diligence, consideration, and his sincere effort to appreciate and understand their village. One night, as the sisters sat talking quietly amongst themselves, Lucia cautiously brought it up. Could it be that all four of us are developing feelings for David? They looked at each other and silently nodded. Lucia, Isabel, Natalia, and Camila couldn't deny they all felt the same way. Although they found it hard to believe, how can this happen? The sisters agreed not to hurt each other through jealousy or conflict. It wasn't just one of them who liked him, for some reason. All four had developed feelings around the same time. Then one day, while David was gathering materials at the village market, an urgent message arrived from Camila, the youngest sister. Some thugs came to the house. One of them keeps threatening us. I'm scared to death. Can you come quickly? The sisters knew there was a group resembling a small gang nearby. Though the village was generally peaceful, they often extorted money or goods from vulnerable people and sometimes resorted to violence. That day, while the older sisters were out working, only Camila and Natalia were home when the thugs showed up unexpectedly, making threats. As soon as David saw the message, his heart sank. He quickly found a police officer patrolling nearby and explained the situation, mobilizing all his broken Portuguese and Spanish to convey that the sisters were in danger. The police immediately called for a patrol car and went with him to the sisters' house. Fortunately, the police arrived without major incident and were able to chase the thugs away. However, Camila and Natalia were terrified, hiding inside a room. When the police assured them it was safe, they opened the door and ran out. Teary-eyed, Lucia and Isabel, who had been contacted, rushed home, their faces etched with anxiety. Seeing David was safe, the four sisters threw themselves into his arms, sobbing, "We were so scared. If it weren't for you, something terrible could have happened." In that moment, David felt an intense desire to protect these women. A mix of fear, what if I had been slightly later, and responsibility churned within him, making his own heart tremble. Then, as if by a pre-arranged signal, the sisters, simultaneously or nearly so, poured out the confessions. "The truth is, we really like you. We like you as a person. beyond the language barrier. When you're here, we feel at ease and find ourselves relying on you. In this crisis, you were the first person we thought of. That's when we realized. We love you. Hearing confessions from all four, David was taken aback, yet his heart swelled with emotion. It was an almost unimaginable situation, not one, but four sisters loving him at the same time. But in that moment, he wanted to be honest about the feelings welling up inside him, rather than rely on rational judgment. Me too. I don't think I can be without you all now either. You are truly precious to me, and I want to be with you. As soon as these words left his lips, the sisters burst into tears again, their faces showing profound relief. The terror they had felt mingled with the joy of confirmed love, painting complex emotions across their faces. From that day on, David decided to stay at the sisters' house permanently. Thoughts like, how will 5 people live in this small house? Arose. But the sisters already lived with a fairly organized routine. Lucia was the first to reassure him. There's still one empty room here. We've always relied on each other, so having you join won't be a big problem. Isabel added, living together is safer than being exposed to danger at night. Surprisingly, the villagers didn't show much shock. Of course, some whispered, isn't it a bit strange for one man to live with 4 women? But most knew how hard the sisters worked and were generally welcoming towards anyone who helped them, especially an outsider who seemed respectful and genuinely invested. Many also said that if it was a positive change, seeing the sisters looking brighter, then that was enough. Thus began the cohabitation of the 5. Although they didn't have a formal wedding or legal documents, their life was essentially that of a family. Surprisingly, there were few major arguments. The sisters knew each other well enough, and David genuinely cared for and loved each of them. So any conflicts that arose were quickly resolved through conversation. Lucia established order as the eldest sister. Isabel acted as a mediator, and Natalia and Camila played their parts in keeping the atmosphere bright. As soon as they started living together, David and the sisters seriously began the work of discovering the village's resources and products. They visited neighboring villages and cities to meet artisans and herb farmers, proposing collaborations. Meanwhile, David contacted his network and acquaintances back in the US to build online sales channels, asking them to explore the possibility of introducing Brazilian handicrafts and specialties to the American market. Lucia and the sisters compiled lists of artisans they knew and selected marketable products one by one. Natalia and Camila, with their artistic talents, and Isabel, with her interest in languages, handled overseas promotion and translation. Lucia managed household affairs and cared for village elders while also checking on the overall business operations with David. By dividing tasks this way, the project progressed faster than expected. In the process, the villagers gradually opened their hearts. Initially skeptical, what are these 4 sisters and the American trying to do? They saw the group's sincere and diligent work and became cooperative. Artisans joined hands with the hope of promoting their crafts further afield. Farmers agreed, seeing the potential to sell their harvests at fair prices. Fueled by the hope, could we really prosper if we cooperate like this? Villagers gradually increased their participation. Simultaneously, David and the 4 sisters' love for each other deepened. Whether brainstorming business ideas late into the night or laughing together, they expressed gratitude for each other's roles. In both joyful and difficult times, they felt a strong sense of security within their bond. Sometimes, one would joke, "Isn't this really like a movie?" Others would chuckle and reply, "It's more movie-like than a movie." One day, unexpected news arrived. Lucia wasn't feeling well and visited the doctor, only to receive a diagnosis of pregnancy. Astonishingly, soon after, Isabel, Natalia, and Camila also visited the doctor with similar symptoms and discovered they were all pregnant. At first, they laughed it off as a joke. Is this even possible? But the confirmed results were truly astounding. I brought it up first, but everyone at the same time. I can't believe it, Lucia said, dumbfounded, while Isabel, Natalia, and Camila looked at each other and burst out laughing. When David heard the news, He froze for a moment before finally letting out the emotions he'd held back. Shedding tears. I'm going to be a father. 4 times. All at once. It's unbelievable, he repeated, overcome with profound emotion. The villagers were also astonished by the news, calling it a true miracle. News of the foreigner and the 4 sisters forming a family was already unusual. But the simultaneous pregnancies caused an explosion of congratulations and interest. Of course, there were some disapproving looks and critical reactions. However, because David and the sisters looked so happy, and the impact on the village had been positive, most watched warmly, thinking, isn't a new form of family okay? For their prenatal care, the sisters received help from the villagers. Whenever David had a spare moment, he rushed between the hospital and pharmacy, getting necessary supplies and health foods. The pregnancies were harder than expected, and with 4 women pregnant simultaneously, the situation was not easy. Fortunately, they looked after each other, and with the help of fellow villagers, they gradually prepared for childbirth. Finally, the appointed times arrived. Lucia went into labor first, and around the same time, Isabel, Natalia, and Camila also began to give birth. It would have been incredibly difficult without the cooperation of the village health clinic, a hospital in a nearby city, and the residents, with 4 sisters giving birth almost simultaneously. The medical staff was frantic, but everyone did their best. As a result, the sisters safely delivered 4 babies. When the cries of the healthy newborns filled the hospital corridors, the sisters held each other's hands tightly, shedding tears of joy. David, too, facing the unbelievable reality of being the father of 4 infants, was speechless with emotion. I'm really the father of all these children. He hugged each sister in turn, repeating, thank you so much. The villagers cheered at the news. The birth of this large family became an event symbolizing hope and vitality. Going beyond mere gossip, the business David and the sisters initiated continued to develop, and the village economy improved significantly compared to before. It grew to the point where it earned the nickname Artisan Village, through collaborations with various external organizations. From the children's birth until around their first birthdays, the sisters focused on childcare while steadily guiding the business direction. David took charge of overall planning and developing overseas markets, while Lucia, Isabel, Natalia, and Camila collaborated with villagers on producing local specialties and operating experience programs. Some Brazilian media outlets began highlighting the village as a model of small-scale innovation. In the past, the weak and elderly were sometimes harassed by thugs, but now the community's strength had grown, making it difficult for criminal elements to gain a foothold. An atmosphere of mutual help and trust took root among the people. As the children gradually grew, David and the sisters nurtured a new dream, always feeling the lack of educational and cultural facilities in the village. They wished to build a cultural center. When they proposed this at a village meeting, the initial reaction was skepticism. How can we do it without funds? However, leveraging their solid business performance, national and international connections, external funding, government support, and the willing labor of residents, they pushed the project forward. Eventually, a small but enriching cultural center was built. It hosted children's educational programs, craft and cooking classes, local history exhibits, and simple performances. We hope our children, and all the children in the village, can dream bigger dreams, Lucia stated at the opening ceremony. At that moment, David, dressed smartly for the occasion, and the sisters, dressed in reinterpreted traditional Brazilian dresses, stood on stage. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, the 5 adults and their children stood united as one entity called family. The village was gradually transforming from just an artisan village into a village of culture and education. They introduced a reservation system for tourists and external visitors to prevent uncontrolled commercialization, limiting numbers, while residents credited the changes to the 4 sisters, the American man, and their children. The family insisted it was a miracle the villagers had created themselves. As the children grew a bit older and started attending kindergarten and school, David and the sisters set a new goal: They wanted to someday take the children to the United States to show them their father's culture firsthand. They also wanted them to travel to other regions outside Brazil to gain diverse experiences. If circumstances allow, we can leave any time, they thought, but the question of who will manage the village affairs weighed on them. Fortunately, a younger generation had recently begun moving into the village, and new leaders were emerging. They started entrusting the business operations and cultural center management to these new leaders, gradually preparing for more freedom of movement. Of course, even if they traveled abroad or moved elsewhere together, they were already like a single entity. When people occasionally asked, "What's the legal situation exactly?" David and the sisters would reply, "We are bound by love and responsibility stronger than any document. That's enough." People looked at them with curious eyes, and sometimes with negativity, but as the village's achievements and their sincerity became known, such views gradually subsided. As time passed, looking back on the days they first met, it seemed like mere coincidence or fate. No one could have known that the sisters' simple act of kindness, extending a hand to a lost and wandering stranger, would bring about such immense change and happiness. They had become indispensable to each other, and their children grew up receiving abundant love from their four mothers, one father, and the entire village community. The village itself continued its custom of offering a warm meal to visitors and readily lending a hand to those in difficulty. The virtue of kindness even to strangers, and the desire to repay favors, had fostered a community where people supported each other. David and the sisters agreed, "Now it's time for us to give back more than we received." And they were putting that resolution into practice through the cultural center, various welfare projects, and educational programs. One evening, the family of 5 adults and 4 children gathered for a noisy, bustling dinner. The sound of the children chattering and playing filled the house. Washing dishes by the kitchen window, Lucia looked out at the sunset and murmured, "We've really come a long way." Isabel gently came up and patted her shoulder. Natalia sketched the sunset outside as if capturing a painting. Camila played hide and seek with the children, laughing heartily. David took in all these scenes, thinking to himself, "There are still many more pictures for us to draw together." Thus, David Miller, once a stranger in a foreign land, and the 4 sisters from rural Brazil, bound by love and trust, had become a family stronger than any other, and the village they transformed remained living proof that warmth and miracles are still possible in this world. One autumn evening, years later, as the children were growing into adults, a special family gathering took place in the front yard of the cultural center in that quiet Brazilian village. Having weathered joys, sorrows, and countless challenges together over long years, David Miller, the 4 sisters, and their children, now walking their own paths but never forgetting they were one family, gathered. Their laughter echoing, they caught up on each other's lives, shared memories, and continued the warm conversation that had always defined them. David sat at a small table in the corner of the yard, watching his entire family, his eyes misting over, seeing everyone together like this today. "My heart is truly full," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It makes me realize anew how many difficulties we overcame for each other, and how much we've relied on one another." His voice carried the weight of years of responsibility, love, and sometimes confusing emotions. The 4 sisters, though living their own lives now, still shared the same deep bond and unwavering affection for their family. Lucia spoke calmly. "When we first met, there was loneliness and fear, but we survived by trusting and relying on each other. Those days were hard, but the fact that we can all laugh together now is the result of all our strengths combined." Isabel nodded quietly. "Our path wasn't always smooth, but we overcame everything with our unique love and faith. We faced difficulties for being a mixed culture family, but through our love and unity for each other, we broke down those prejudices." Nearby, Natalia and Camila laughed while looking through old childhood photos. The children, long accustomed to these family gatherings, exchanged warm hugs, watching their parents. One of the children asked gently, "Dad, when I was little, I never imagined our family was so special. How did you feel back then?" David closed his eyes for a moment. then answered softly, honestly, at first, I was confused and often afraid. The discrimination and prejudice I faced as a foreigner, and that our family might face because we were different, weighed heavily on my heart. But meeting all of you, seeing how warmly you embraced each other, I realized how rich my life could become. All that pain ultimately made us stronger. Hearing his words, the sisters looked into each other's eyes, sharing a silent understanding of the pain and joy accumulated over the years. There were many times we faced discrimination, being from different backgrounds in a foreign country. Isabel added quietly, but we showed that by trusting each other, we could overcome any hardship. I believe the wounds our family endured became a great strength that could even change the world. Lucia nodded thoughtfully. Our example positively influenced the villagers too, eventually becoming a force to fight discrimination together. We changed not just our family, but the perceptions of our neighbors and society as a whole. The atmosphere of the gathering grew warmer with laughter and shared stories. After a while, Camila, the youngest, shared a small grievance from her childhood. When I was little, other people's stares bothered me so much. Comments like, "Why do those people look like that?" used to upset me. But now I know how precious it is that we are all different. Natalia gently added, "Those words actually brought us closer together and helped us affirm each other's value. We're not shaken by such prejudice anymore. As long as we're together, we can overcome anything." David, listening to all this, swallowed hard, trying to hold back tears. Reflecting deeply on the meaning of family, he said with heartfelt sincerity, "The path I've walked has sometimes been lonely and difficult. But because I walked it with all of you, I can be this happy today. You are the greatest joy and pride of my life." That night, gathered under the soft lights, the family shared dreams and hopes for the future. The children, now adults forging their own paths, always made time for these gatherings, listening to each other, offering advice, and reaffirming their deep love. One child remarked, "Seeing our family together like this, talking, it's the most beautiful scene in the world. If we're all together, we can overcome any prejudice, any difficulty." As the night deepened, the conversation became even more sincere. David spoke of the anxiety and fear he felt when he first set foot in this land. Living in a foreign country wasn't easy. As a foreigner, and with our mixed family, the misunderstandings and discrimination were sometimes hard to bear. But being with all of you made it possible to laugh even through the pain. The unity and love our family showed ultimately gave courage to others. And slowly, the world's perspective began to change. He confessed. His words brought tears to the sisters' eyes as they hugged each other. And the children watched, deeply moved. This gathering was more than just a family reunion. It was a space to share the pain they had overcome and the hope they held for the future. They had conquered the discrimination and prejudice they faced due to their background with unwavering love and trust, sparking small changes in the hearts of others. That night, David Miller, the four sisters, and their children reaffirmed their commitments and promises for the future, offering each other comfort and courage within the warm embrace of their family. May our story shed even a little light on the darkness that still remains in this world. David said. Everyone nodded in agreement, sharing his sentiment. The family gathering continued long into the night. As the darkness outside deepened, their conversation grew warmer. The image of these individuals, each with different experiences and scars, united and supporting one another, sent a powerful message, even in a quiet rural village in a foreign land. Their bond could shine brightly. They firmly promised to continue being a warm light for each other and for the world, leaving that night's conversation etched in their hearts as an unforgettable family memory.